So, hi everyone. ¿Cómo están? Me llamo Alejandra, and this is me when I graduated at this thesis show, but like it's literally a movie. Like, how did I get to this point in my life? And I'd like to start with something that's very important to me. I am Mexican, born and raised. I am an immigrant now in the US, part of a broader community. I am Latina too. So, yeah. That identity has always shaped how I move through the world, even before I had the language for it. I was already fighting for justice without realizing it, like when I convinced my family to drive for 5 hours from Córdoba, my hometown, to Mexico City, just to march on a protest. And that moment taught me very early on that change never starts alone. It always starts with community, and sometimes with a very patient family like mine, willing to join your cause. So while my ideas around justice and change started early in my life, it was during COVID that I finally had the time and the urgency to act upon them. And during the lockdown, partly because I was searching for meaningful conversation, but also in a desperate attempt to find freedom and connection, I began a blog. And it was around provocative themes. It was curiosity-driven topics that explored the human behavior, emotion, and a mix of capitalism critique, because why not? And somehow it took off. And in very little time, I grew a community of over 20,000 followers. So I soon realized that what mattered wasn't the controversy that my blog carried, but the conversation. So the blog evolved into a kind of virtual club, a space where we explore the role of women in society through characters of mainstream shows that everybody was watching. We unpacked the aftermath of colonialism, and we even tried to find deeper meanings in Bad Bunny's lyrics. And yes, this was back in 2022, so let me tell you all that Latin America had already been into Bad Bunny long before y'all. So eventually we had a virtual energy and it became real. We organized a small gathering in Mexico City where online friendship turned into real-world community. And that moment showed me how design and connection could transcend screens. This blog changed everything for me, and it made me realize I didn't just want to communicate or create pretty visuals. I wanted to create change. And that clarity is what led me to DSI, and soon I found myself in New York City, treating this concrete landscape as my library, learning from every street, every conversation, community I encounter beyond the walls of DSI. As you'll see through this presentation, a lot of what I do is inspired by music, and in fact, the very first presentation has a Tupac quote. So yeah, I was going through my hip-hop era in that moment. So I started diving deep into DSI and the lectures, and I started seeing design differently, not just as aesthetics, but as a way to address inequity, voice, and belonging. At DSI, I found community that believed design could be a practice of care, empathy, and transformation, beyond visual, aesthetic, and more than creativity, but with creativity, of course. The project that highlights this path was during the communication design class, where I collaborated with a team in my cohort and working with Loving the Bronx and Montefiore residents, as Mia already said. We designed a campaign to bridge the gap between design and everyday language, meeting people where they are. We dove into messy systems like walkability, health, and justice, and learned that real impact begins with listening. DSI taught me to slow down, to question power, and to design with communities, not for them. We always meet people where they are. So the first part of my collaboration with Loving the Bronx ended in success, and up to this day, Nilka from Loving the Bronx is still using the posters we designed for her. My interest kept growing, and now the question shifted. Where are the people who this project will serve? Where are the newer generations? So I went back to the beginning. This mind shift shaped my thesis, Neighborhood, and it began with a question: how can hip-hop culture help the Bronx youth reimagine their future? And I guess in a way it was kind of meant to be. As I said, my very first presentation started with a Tupac Shakur quote, and those 2 years of my master's, we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip-hop in New York without me knowing it. So Yes, not just New York, but even SVA was offering a lot of screening, talks, and workshops about hip-hop's influence. And thanks, Mia, because she always kept me on track, sending me every single one of them. I went to many as I could, and everything was aligning. I partnered with Bronx community organization, Bronx Connect, and hip-hop education organization, Hip Hop Works, to co-create spaces for youth expression and civic storytelling. We called it Rimas y Realidades, a bilingual workshop blending rap, poetry, and social design to explore local issues. Through hip-hop, young people mapped their neighborhoods through sounds, wrote lyrics about change, and saw words transform into design intervention. This project taught me that design can be an amplifier, a way for people to hear themselves more clearly into the systems around them. The session turned into a powerful space for reflection, a moment where Bronx youth could speak from their lived experience. And with DSI guidance, of course, Neighborhood was about centering youth as co-creators of meaning. Their verses touched on air pollution, on displacement, and neglect. But more than anything, it showed that when you make space for them, they're ready to engage, to question, and reimagine their future through creativity and through collective voice. So overall, DSI gave me more than a degree. It gave me a lens and a way of approaching every project with equity, care, and collaboration. It also gave me the confidence and the language to show up fully as myself in professional spaces. And that led me to my very first job after graduation last year at Pluspool. Now I am co-working with whom once was my thesis advisor, Cara Mayer. My role as communications and education designer is helping connecting communities to the water and making the mission feel accessible, joyful, and human. DSI also helped me to put a name to the work that I've been doing my whole life, listening, translating, bridging stories and systems, and grounding it in research and real-life frameworks. And because of that, I became Johnson Asberry's Communications' first ever social designer. Yes. In this role, I help transform complex infrastructure and policy projects into people-centered experiences. I design engagement strategies, materials, and moments that make communities feel informed, respected, and included. It's about communication, yes, but also, and the most important part of this role and about my life, is about trust. So in many ways, DSI didn't just open doors for me. It shaped the way I walked through them. Muchas gracias.